rā ki te kaihanga I ngā mea katoa, to the creator of all things. Aho ko te maho o ngā whakapono me rātu o ngā ara I wanginui a mātou, ko te whakaro I rungi a mātou, ka haere ngā ara katoa I mu I tu aroaro. Regardless of the many beliefs and creeds we have amongst us, we can assume they all lead to you. Kia koutou ngā kaitiake e noho ana kei rungi I ngā tini āhuatanga o te taiao. To you, the guardians that watch over every aspect of our environment, kia koutou hoki ngā tupuna e noho ana kei runga I a māua. And to the ancestry that sits above each one of us at this meeting. Ho mai kia mātou I rungi tō koutou rangi Māori e tanga manaaki tanga me tō koutou mōhio. We ask that you allow us to have our discussion in a respectful and caring manner, and hopefully some knowledge of what we're talking about. Kia oti tēnei hui kei roto I e rā ngā āhuatanga e mōhio te ana e mātou, ko te pono o te tika me te aroha tonu I wanginui a mātou. And that we complete this hui with our integrity intact and our relationship stronger than when we began. Ko tēnei whakamoimati ki a koe tō ingoa tapu, huri no, huri no. Mai te rangi ki te papa, mai te papa ki te rangi, mai te rāwhiti ki te hau auru. We give thanks for all these things and acknowledgements for this time, for this opportunity, and for the well-being of everything from Mother Earth to our Sky Father, from sunrise to the dawn. Nō reira, pihei mauri ora. It is done, the breath of life. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, it's great to speak to you, Te Ngaehe. I mean, it took us a while to get here, but I'm very appreciative. We got here in the end. It was a bit of a struggle, but yeah, thank you so much. And I guess just to kind of set the scene, and you know, for me to introduce you, we can dive into it. But you know, from what I know, you're a respected Maori leader, elder, and guide, a spokesman for the Ngāti Hikairo people, and guardian authority of the mountainous region in the Tongariro National Park in New Zealand. I hope I'm getting the pronunciations right there.
No, you're good.
And you know, to set the scene for me, I kind of feel I'm on this journey or spiritual quest of sorts. You know, I had these profound experiences in Egypt where, I don't know, the light, I mean, I've got all these crazy photos and videos where the light is drawn to me at ancient and sacred sites. And I personally believe this is a direct result of me spending time in nature and being in awe of nature and connecting with Mother Earth. And I personally, I mean, the old me saying this 10 years ago, I would have thought it was crazy, but I think nature in some ways opened up my senses, and which has led for me to have these profound experiences. And as part of this journey I'm on, I really truly believe we need to learn from the past, from the ancients, from the elders, from the wisdom keepers and indigenous peoples who really view Mother Earth as sacred and understand everything is connected and between us and Mother Earth and the cosmos. And I feel that wisdom from people like yourself is essential for us to re-establish that that reciprocal relationship with the planet, if that makes sense. And this journey that is brought me here to this moment now to really speak to you. So I'm really grateful and thankful to be speaking to you. So hopefully that introduction kind of makes sense. And you know, this rep in nature thing, this is not my day job. I've got my day job, I've got my kids, and this is my family, and this is something I'm doing on the side, but it's really something I'm passionate about, you know. And so yeah, so really thankful for your time. So I don't know, maybe you gave us that wee bit introduction at the start, but perhaps you could kind of, I don't know, give us a wee bit of an introduction. Sorry, I was talking quite a bit there.
No, Um, look, thank you for that, David. I, I think you've described how the lens in which we always view the world. Our people arrived in Aotearoa from an island in Tahiti called Rangiatia as part of a migration 34 generations ago. I expect every one of my children and their children, and now their children, I've got great grandchildren,
Wow.
to know the genealogy from those 34 generations to themselves before they're the age of 16. I expect them to know the brothers and sisters of each one of those generations and the connections. My father could recite 400 generations.
Wow.
So that took us back through the stories. It was the basis of who we are as Ngāti Hikairo, which is a hapu. Is your ancestry Scottish, David?
I'm Scottish, so
yeah.
Celtic,
So a hapu,
yeah.
a hapu is a clan, and the tribe is, my tribe is Ngāti Tūwharetoa, but my clan within that tribe is Ngāti Hikairo.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us are responsible for looking after an area within our tribal district.
Mm-hmm.
Ngāti Hikairo's area has always been the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So for the 34 generations, and we say before, I trace our genealogy back as far as my father did. It's 9 hours of oral. And part of the reason of what we call whakapapa, genealogy, is that unless we know who we are and where we came from, how do we have a foundation to look at the world? And the whakapapa gives us an understanding of our kinship to every single element within this world. To what we literally call Mother Earth, which almost sounds like a cliche now, but that is our word. Papa Tuanuku. Yeah. And all the celestial, everything in the sky, which is Papa Tuanuku's partner, Ranginui.
Yeah.
And before Ranginui or Te Rā or Tamanui Te Rā, there are 3 different names. We go back to the beginning, which started at what we call Iorangi, which is the creator. And then from Iorangi came an infinite millennium of shades of from the deepest black and shades of darkness that are unimaginable, and over a time period that was unimaginable. And then from those shades of darkness, which we call the pō, slowly came consciousness and awakening. So it's not an explosive thing.
Yeah.
And then from the pō came the 2 main deities, which is Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku for us here on Earth. And from them came their children who had, over their creation, Papa Tuanuku created this world, and the children of those two were the guardians of all things in this world, all things, everything that exists. So those children looked after, and us as mankind, and it's a long story, but we know our connection from when it transferred from there to us. We came off one of those children, mankind, which made all those things in creation at that moment. We were created. At that very moment, we became what we would call first cousins to everything in existence.
Mm-hmm.
Because they all came from the other gods, from Papatūānuku, literally our grandmother at that time. And then from there, mankind slowly populated, and were slowly entrusted, not with the ownership of the land. We had no concept of ownership. So we didn't have a concept of the land belonging to us or anything within the land, the resources we use belonging to us. We had a concept of us belonging to that.
Yeah.
So we belong to the land.
Yeah.
What we did have we were all born with an inherent responsibility to protect all the things that we had been entrusted with by the children of Papatūānuku and Ranginui, to ensure that whatever we took from it, we took in a manner that was respectful and enabled the perpetuation of whatever it was and its well-being. And so now when I look at Tongariro and I look at the mountains and I go to the mountains, it's not just geography and geology. It's not just landscape. The things around me aren't just flora and fauna. They're living connections of which you and I have a kinship to.
Yeah.
And that kinship is inseparable. It's to the water, to everything.
Everything's connected.
Everything's connected.
But we've lost that though, don't you think, in terms of where we are today in the modern world?
I think indigenous people still have it. This isn't unique to Māori. We just have we have the way of looking at the world. We just have different names and maybe different stories.
Yeah.
But they all have the same thing. They have a concept of not belonging to us, but us belonging to it. We have a concept of kinship. No matter where you go, we have a story. The Western world had this. Yeah. They had stories that were. I remember speaking in Auckland. I try not to go to the cities in Aotearoa, but I was invited to go to Auckland.
Yeah.
And I was telling them, they asked for our creation story. And I said it would take days, but I'll give you a brief. And there were about 400 people at this, and I asked them to ask questions. It was 3 days before Easter in 2019. And they said, and outside was the, outside of where I was speaking, it was at the Auckland Town Hall. Just down the street a little bit was the a large Presbyterian cathedral or church that had been built in, we haven't got the history of Scotland, but it was built in like 1900, yeah, 1901, and the Catholic cathedral. And I think we could just see the Catholic cathedral from these big windows I had behind me. So at the end, I asked people to, ask questions. If you don't ask, I like people to ask questions. Or don't be politically correct. Just ask. So one guy said, "You guys don't actually believe this, do you?" And he was a guy from England, and I said, "We're 2 days out from Easter, so almost your whole judiciary and everything that you call government now was born out of an institution that one of the parts of it we will celebrate in 2 days."
Mm-hmm.
We as Māori do not doubt your story that someone died on a cross and on the 3rd day he rose from the dead. We do not doubt your story that this group of people being pursued by the Pharaoh and troops from Egypt stood at the shores of the Red Sea and the sea parted for them and they crossed. We don't doubt that. That's your story. Is your story any further far-fetched than what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
And I said, a celebration to those stories is just outside. And one of those places, every Sunday, they have a little wafer of something that represents bread. And the people that take that wafer are told that's the body of Christ. And then you drink a little sip of wine and they're told that's the blood of Christ. So Easter, in 2 days, we'll celebrate all of that.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not my fault you're disconnected from that, but that was once what ruled the way you saw the world. And somewhere along there, you may have been natural conservatives, conservationists once, in the days where prior to the New Testament, but you've gone from that to being extractivists, and that accelerated from the time that you found another way of wealth, and that was to virtually strip countries of their wealth through colonization in the name of what you believed in. And so I said to them, thankfully, my tribe, which is the Central North Island, thankfully we didn't take kindly to missionaries. But where we are now, Auckland, they embrace the missionaries, and of course, that's where the major cities are of New Zealand. So we've just got to take each other's stories and accept them. But we are still looking through the lens of the world, and this was 2019.
Yeah.
In 2020, COVID hit. Now the world's all over the place. And I said in 2019 that a way of resetting and a way of redemption, and there will come a time where you will look at the indigenous peoples and maybe with a good mixture of law and law, L-A-W and L-O-O-R-E, if we can blend that, if we can get that right, we might find a way to get out of this. But my father used to say when I was a child, David, that aha ko te pai o te kaupapa ko te tangata te raru. No matter how wonderful a vision is when you put it, when you share it, us as people, it's our nature to whakara. we can't do it. You go, David.
No, I was going to say, I mean, everything you've said totally resonates with me, and the Mother Earth and Sky Father, and you know, I'm no expert, but I get a sense with indigenous peoples across the world that these are the same themes and stories, Mother Earth and Sky Father. I remember when we exchanged messages at the start, you sent me a message, an email. It really resonated with me. Maori are the descendants of the great. Are you there? I lost you.
Yeah, I'm here. It's just my connect. Yeah,
it said
it's
Maori,
just my connection.
Maori are the descendants of the great navigators. We trace our genealogy back over 400 generations to a time when the celestial and terrestrial were intertwined, to a time when spiritual and physical were one and the same. It was through these connections and belief systems that Maori connect to everything in existence. Our genealogical lines descend from the gods of creation. This is an umbilical cord that we have never severed. I really felt that when we first exchanged the messages, and it feels true to me. And I don't know. I just get this sense that we now today the modern world, we're too caught up in the modern day bullshit and social media and celebrity and having objects and things. We've severed that connection with Mother Earth. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, David.
How do we get that back? How do we reconnect people? It's a big question, but you know,
we always say there's 4 equal parts to the well-being of who and what we are. There's the spiritual, there's the emotional, there's the cultural, because we identify things in a different language and from a different association with the land we're on. But it's essentially the same. And it's the physical. We've got a major part of our world that no longer see anything through the spiritual and the maybe emotional parts of their soul, of who they are as a being, that they've got blinkers on, where they just see the physical, which is the material, what they can touch, what they can hold, what they can put under their mattress. You know, it's meaningless, but it has a place, but it doesn't dominate everything else. The spiritual is, so we've got to a place where the creation has given us, through that awakening, that millennium, that unimaginable length of time that we can't even comprehend, that slow awakening of the different shades from pitch darkness to just the glimmer of light. And then from that to Ao Marama, which is the illumination of all things. So we're looking at all these things through science, when we've got 90% of what we were born with here. That's unused. That's untapped, because the world has become so attuned to that 10% that deals with the physical, with the material, that forgotten how to use the other 90% we were born with. And that 90% allows us to transcend meaningless stuff.
Yeah.
So when we look at anything, our lens that we see it through is not just the visual. It's not just what you can touch, and it's not just what you can taste and hear. It's what you can feel and what you can see through the other lens. How do you, these are gifts that came about through that, the celestial and terrestrial and all things between, through those connections. And then some people, the autistic people, sometimes have an accident or someone gets hit in the head, and all of a sudden they speak a language that they didn't know. All these things happen to them where they are extraordinary in one thing and no one can quite understand it, but all the part of the physical, which is them being able to sometimes talk properly or walk properly, that's gone.
Yeah.
But another part has come where all of a sudden, you know, some guy that could barely draw a picture with a crayon turns into this great artist and no one knows where it came from.
Yeah.
Or can write music and play music like Mozart.
Yeah.
That's because it's there. It's always there. And we as Indigenous people nowhere near utilize, we're not saying we utilize 90%, but we see the world through more than the 10%.
Yeah.
That just deals with the mechanics of life.
Yeah.
There's more.
For sure. I don't think
you've felt it, David. It's touched you.
I don't think you can see it, but I've got this tattoo in my arm. It's a pyramid, and there's
I can see it. Yeah.
There's a man, and there's a tree, and there's the cosmos.
Yeah, I can see it. It's beautiful.
This kind of, for me, represents and I've got the Eye of Horus there, but this for me represents the ancients. I think they had some sort of higher state of consciousness, which they had this greater connection with Mother Earth and the cosmos. And we've completely lost sight of it. That's what this represents. And you feel I
think the American dollar, it's got virtually the same thing, but with the eye at the top. And I used to look at the American dollar and think, now who did this? You know, like, who did this? Because even though it's a different way interpretation to us, it actually means the same thing to us. It's the connection. And everyone has it. And somehow a part of you's been activated.
And you know, one thing for me, I think, you know, I think the deeper our relationship with nature,
I'm still here, David.
I think the deeper our relationship with nature is, the more fulfilled we are with less stuff, if you see what I mean. You know, one thing I do when I'm posting these videos of trees and rocks is, I don't know, I've got this sense of wonder and awe, and I think that's a big thing we've lost. People don't see the magic in nature. They've lost that awe and wonder. Do you see what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
How do we get that back? How do we get people to see this again? That's my big thing. How do people actually think, oh, there's the sun, or look at this tree, or, you know what I mean? How do we
I think it's there. I see, you know, the most popular movies that come out are movies of, I don't go to the movies, but you know, it's things like Avatars. It's things like the Marvel stuff.
Science fiction.
It's that stuff. It's then you get things on TV, Game of Thrones, the Hobbits, and
Lord of the Rings.
or the Lord of the Rings, and it resonates with people somewhere. All that resonates. This fantasy world resonates, and it's because some part of them's understanding that, or maybe not even understanding, some part of them knows or feels that this is maybe that alternate place. I've got a connection to that. Then they walk outside of the theatre, and they still love it and they feel good about it, but they can't quite understand why. And I would always think to myself when I see these blockbusters and think, that's because some part of that is a part of you. And some part of those stories. The guy from England, when, I was talking to him about, is Merlin really part of, is it part of, do you look at it as Merlin as total fiction? Or those days, the days of the Nordic gods? We have those gods,
and
the
giants,
same gods.
And giants.
Yeah, and giants.
Yeah.
We don't discard that. Western society does not discard that. They want it to be real. They don't know why they want it to be real. It's because they know somewhere in the darkest part of them where the light hasn't shone, with you, the light has shone somewhere on you, and it's activated something. They get a touch of that. We not all Māori, there's different levels, because you've got, before we Māori start anything, we do what's called karakia, which is an acknowledgement that's appropriate for what we're doing. It may be to the god of the wind, it may be to the mountains, to the water, to the whatever. But it's inclusive, and it's part of what we do. We cannot start any activity. I do not start one day without acknowledging. I do not end a day. I don't think prayers is quite the word. And somehow with Western world has managed to say, okay, we need some expression of spirituality. So for 6 days a week, they live in this really non-spiritual realm. And then on the 7th day, some go into a box, and for an hour, the majority go through the motions. I'm not doubting that there's another significant amount that they're moved spiritually by going to church. I'm not, but that's not the majority. That's the other ones are going because, well, it won't look good not to.
Yeah. Nature is my church. Nature is my temple,
Yeah. And you can't bullshit that church. You can't bullshit that belief, because it's not something that's hugely visible. It is and it isn't, but for 99% of the time, it's an intimate relationship that you have with all the things you speak of, David. It's something that where that umbilical cord has never been severed. It pumps through our veins. It's our lifeblood. When Māori greet each other, they we put our noses against each other, our forehead, and we grip each other's hand. The forehead is so we connect spiritually, because that's one of the places we believe is the gateway to that miracle that's inside our head that we only use 10% of. That's our physical connection to all things that are between exoteric and esoteric and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
We touch noses and we breathe in, and we call it a hongi.
Mm-hmm.
And that celebrates the first breath of life. We share it with each other. We commemorate it with each other when it went from the gods to mankind. It's not rubbing noses, it's actually just sharing the breath of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is the hand, and I think that's universal. It's to tell the other person, it's symbolic of not being armed. I come in peace, I'm not armed. So you put the hand forward that you usually hold the weapon in. So one's the physical, the hand goes forward that you usually hold the weapon in. One is commemorative to the beginning of mankind, the first breath, and the other is spiritual, and it's rai ki te rai. We do that every time we meet, wherever.
And is that for, you think that is that for the young Maori people are like that as well, or is that you speaking as an elder?
So the young Maori
Youngsters,
people,
you know,
may not do it all the time, but they do it. Any formal thing at school or anything, when they're given a prize at school, whether the teachers at that school are Māori or not, when the kids go up to accept the prize, the principal or the teachers will always hongi them. Always. When anyone comes onto one of our marae, which is, clan headquarters, when anyone comes to any of our marae, every single person that comes to our marae must greet every single person on that marae, 2 lines, and that includes the children. And then they're all accepted as part of, they belong to that marae after that. It's so entwined. These connections that we celebrate and commemorate are so much part of our daily life that they've crossed over the generations into some of the norms of mainstream society in Aotearoa. All the schools practice it. All the schools practice the kaitiaki, which are the gods. All the schools teach the kids about, the god of the wind, the god of the sea, the guardian of... The kids know this. Whether you're Māori or not, it's gone into the curriculum here.
So, I mean, education's clearly key. So, I mean, how do we, outside of the Maori world, how do we regain that? How do we view Mother Earth as sacred again? Because that's kind of, your ancestors and the ancients, they viewed the earth as sacred. How do we, try to think what I'm trying to say? How do we get that, that view for people to view the Mother Earth and
you've got?
Do you understand what I mean?
You've got. So all our babies when they're born, they must probably be more acutely aware than we are, but we ensure that they don't lose that. And you can lose that, when you get to the age of 4 or 5 and you've been taught, by then it's starting to shape the way you see the world, and you can lose that. But we've had people here that they're not Māori, but they're our family. We call them whānau, our family. They grew up here, and they have as deep a connection as we do because they grew up in it. Whether they be a lot of our people, I'd say 90% of our people are still hunter-gatherers. We've got forests full of deer and wild pork. We feed our families from the forest. And so who's with us? And we've got people, and they would say the same things as you. I remember I've got a friend that lives with me. He's 76 now, but we met each other in 1970, working in Wellington.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been friends since 1970. He was almost like it was almost like Elf Garnet. He was the most politically incorrect little prick I'd ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And I saved him from. We met in a pub, and I saved him by telling them to come and sit by me, because these guys are going to make sure you don't walk out of here. So we've been mates ever since. And he said to me about 40 years ago, how do I see the world like that? And I said, don't ever stop thinking like that. Don't ever stop believing. About the time he asked me, there was a movie that came out called Nadia. And it was about this whole world was disappearing because people had stopped believing. They stopped reading the stories. They stopped believing. And as they stopped believing, bits of this other world started to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I said to Skippy, that's what it is. If we stop believing, we will lose it. If we keep believing, connecting in our head, talking to these things in our head, it's not easy to connect, but one day when it happens, you'll know it happened. It may have been your moment in Egypt, and you may have had other moments, but a day will come where that's your norm. Those moments don't become, they're not extraordinary moments anymore. They make an extraordinary life because those moments are ordinary. They become your norm. And Skippy's gone from, the Elf Garnet, the most bigoted little prick I've ever met, to actually understand he doesn't need me for his relationship, the relationship he has with everything now and the lens that he has to view the world. He doesn't need me, but he understands immediately. I'll say, look at that. And it may be something in a sunset or a sunrise. And he looks at it, and I know he sees more than just a beautiful sunrise.
Yeah.
I know he sees that. So we don't have to speak. And, Skippy will come home, and we call him Skippy because he turned up here from Australia.
I was going to say, it sounds like a right Aussie name, Skippy. Skippy the
Yeah,
guy.
he was, I'm surprised he survived the first week in New Zealand. I think if I hadn't bumped into him. Because he walked into this pub with a safari suit on.
Right.
The only thing missing was the little hat. And
sounds like a character, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, but he's anyway. he found it. He found his. And David, you will find yours. You've already, there's already a crack in the window for you. With guys like Skippy, he had 4 sets of brick walls and you name it in front of him, but he got there. He got there without preaching. He got there through him actually making the connection himself. No one, people can, I wish you were here. But what the connection you're seeking is all around you. Yeah. You and then when one day you may come here and we'll meet and we'll just add more texture to what you already have. Yeah. I can see it in you, David.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And these experiences I've had, I used to be a wee bit crazy myself with the drink and all the rest of it. I packed all that in. And as I said earlier, the old me 10 years ago, if I was talking about this kind of stuff, about higher states of consciousness and giants and ancients and connection to I would have thought it was a wee bit crazy like 10 years ago, but now this is where I am now. This is my life. And why these experiences have happened to me, I don't know. I'm not really questioning it now, to be fair. I'm just kind of just going with it and going with the flow.
Yeah.
It's brought me to here at this moment, as I said earlier, to speak with you. So for me, it's amazing, and I don't know where it's going. This stuff, my connection, but yeah, I'm loving it.
We say kare koe ngaro he kakano no rangiatia. And what it means in English is a dumb language too. It's very hard to translate things of spiritual, and English doesn't. But a rough translation is that we will never be lost, meaning no human being will ever be lost, for we are a seed from Raiatea, which is a place that's the beginning, our spiritual and physical origins. What that means is that the umbilical cord is never severed. It's kinked, but it's never severed. And e hara te tangata e whiri ana ko wai. So it's not people that choose their pathway, and I think in Western culture it's called destiny. Your pathway has already been chosen, and sometimes you need a nudge. And I believe that's you.
And when I turned up I've been to Egypt a few times, but when I went this year, I've got this Eye of Horus, this one here.
Oh yeah.
I've got these hieroglyphs. So this is Rahu, who's the sun god. So I turned up in Egypt with this, and then I had all these experiences with the light. Clearly something drew me to put this on my body. This is the sun god, Rahu, Horus. So, and then I had these experiences with the light. I don't know. I'm trying to piece it all together, but as I said,
our word for the celestial lord is ranginui. Our word for the sun god, the god of the sun, is Tamanui Te Rā, or Te Rā. Tamanui Te Rā means the son of Ra. And we had a group come to us from Egypt, and they wanted to talk about our concepts to do with Ra. And they asked how long has that been part of Māori belief? And so I said, we can trace that 400 generations to when Māori people left what we believe to be the Middle East. We believe the first human was born somewhere, and our descriptions and our story of that place, because we were born from ko te kahukura, nā te kahukura te tangata. Humanity was born from one of the gods, Tu Mātauranga, Tu, which is the god of war, shaping a woman out of the red earth of this place. And then he slept with that woman, and mankind was born. So that place and the stories of it, it talks about a rip in the land, and it talks about this bubbling volcanic that was coming out of the land. It sounds a lot like the Rift Valley. And then our other stories go into, and they talk about the sea, and they talk about these huge monuments. So those 400 generations were like 40,000 years.
Yeah.
And then the monuments, we think, were the pyramids, and we stayed there for a few centuries and carried through. And then we entered the Americas through our stories. The genealogy, each line has a story or stories. And we entered the Pacific by coming through parts of Asia. We entered the Pacific Rim from different points around the Pacific Rim. And they make up what is now known as Micronesia, Melanesia, and they came from different journeys. And what now Māori and Polynesia, we trace ours back to this, to the beginnings in the Middle East and in the Rift Valley connection somewhere. We crossed the Bering Sea because it tells us at that time we didn't. Our stories don't say the Bering Sea, but it's going from one large landmass to another, which we assume is the Bering Sea across an ice bridge. It must have been solid ice then. We got into the Americas, and we ended up in South America, and that's where we grow a thing in Aotearoa that's been part of our culture, the Polynesian culture, and especially the Māori culture, since the beginning of our occupation of the Pacific. And that sweet potato, which we call kumara, we got that from Peru, and it's traced back to Peru. So some of the things we have here, they can trace back to those and verify it. Our belief systems, why these people came from Egypt and some from India, because our belief systems, they believe, are so intricate and sophisticated, and there's a connection resonates with their belief systems. Not only there's the Nordic. We've almost got a corresponding god for every single one. Us and the Egyptians almost, the names of each god are very similar. So that's something Māori carried. Out of all the Polynesian races, it was Māori who were the navigators.
Yeah.
It was Māori that used the stars to guide, because we were connected. It was the Māori, and then from Māori, the other Polynesians, Rarotonga, Tahiti, Rapa Nui, which is called East Island, and
yeah,
part of Chile. That they were all our natural family. Hawaii. So we all came from the one place.
yeah,
So we believe that when we left Peru, or we came down through Chile, we have stories of what we now know to be the Mapuche people who come from Chile. They have stories of us, how we left Chile. Some saw the islands at Rapa Nui, Easter Island, and maybe a century later they went back there.
yeah.
From the source at Tahiti, some went to Hawaii. Some of us went to Aotearoa. But before that, we were voyaging quite often everywhere, between ourselves. So this was all through connections and a celestial knowledge of using the stars that came with us. That knowledge came with us from the Northern Hemisphere. And of course, when we got to the Southern Hemisphere, it was a whole different set of stars. So that's all part of our old tradition. We still remember the stars from the Northern Hemisphere. We still recite those stars, but we haven't seen them in maybe 5,000 years, 10,000 years.
Yeah.
But they are still part. So that's what blew away these people that came from Egypt, is as we were drawing on these stars systems, they were saying these are the stars that the celestial markers that major parts of the pyramids align with.
Yeah. This stuff for me is fascinating. It's mind blowing, and this is what my social media page Rep in Nature is all about. It's paying homage to nature and the ancients, and you know, for me, our history on the planet is a lot older than what we're led to believe. You know, I believe the pyramids, the Maui statues on Easter Island, these are all pre-flood. So, you know, people talk about these great floods 10,000 years ago. You know, I think we had some sort of global advanced civilization before this great flood. We've forgotten about it. And if you look at some of the monuments in Egypt or Peru or Stonehenge, they were all built with the same technology. They've used the same building techniques.
Exactly.
And
Mexico, South America.
There's a global connection. You know, the mainstream view is Egyptologist view that it was built by slaves is absolutely nonsense.
No way.
Highly intellectual people, you know, and we've completely forgotten about it. And that again for me is the interest. Is for me they had some sort of higher state of consciousness which they could only have had through having that connection with the planet, through and that
I believe you.
Nature. They didn't build these things with chisels or this or that. They were able to soften the stone, manipulate the stone.
You
know, some of these stones are like hundreds and thousands of tons. Like the unfinished obelisk in Aswan in Egypt is 1,300 tons.
Yeah.
I mean,
so technologies long lost.
Yeah.
Maybe technologies that what we would call supernatural powers these days.
Absolutely.
But not then. Go to Cambodia, Angkor Wat.
Yeah.
You know, the whole of Angkor Wat in the middle of there's a commonality between all these major
100%.
and that it's not coincidence. The stories of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Merlin's Island, you know, all that stuff.
There's got to be some element of truth in legends and myths. You know, it's oral tradition passed to writing tradition. You know, Yeah, based on what I've seen, you know, the pyramids, for instance, is not the work of slaves, of primitives. It wasn't built by ropes and chisels. It makes absolutely no sense. The mathematical, the alignment with the stars, the whole engineer behind it, it's beyond what we could do now, I think. You know, it's so these people had that connection. We've lost that connection with the planet, and that's really what really fascinates me. You know, that's
what's always fascinated me, David, is that you know, in the Bible, the first generation or the disciples, I think they were people like that. I'm not a Christian, and I think when formalized religion came along, the Vatican, and I think things like the Inquisition and all of that was to destroy the world's memory of who they are, to destroy people's memory of what they are capable of, and so that they would only be allegiant to the one church, which was Vatican. I'm not getting at the church, but I'm getting at the people that saw power in being the representative and wealth and took advantage. 100 years of Inquisition, you know, the whole of Europe, Western, the world, intergenerationally traumatized and cleansed of any sort of thought that would connect them to all the things that they have trouble connecting to now. It was called witchcraft. It was called idolatry. It was called all these names. But there was one thing in common: you were tortured or killed for it. Who wouldn't want to put that away? Who wouldn't want to have their children deny that to their children, to protect their children? So I don't blame the church. I never blame a church or a religion. I think whatever it is, you know, if you read what they're supposed to be, it's all good stuff. But that's not necessarily how it's applied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there was a time, especially with the doctrine of discovery and stuff like that, when the church went from a deeply spiritual church to a deeply material church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somewhere along there, over those hundreds of years of some pretty corrupt popes, and then later on, as other churches grew, they sort of fell in line, the Lutherans or whatever. They had their own purges. The settlers and the first settlers and the pilgrims in England, they had their own purges, where they burnt and whatever people were purged. And I think it was really to cleanse the world of these belief systems.
And we've lost,
but you can't.
lost all that knowledge. We've lost sight of that.
No more than you.
History. And you mentioned the hunter-gatherers before. I mean, you know, if we had another kind of catastrophe and we had a reset, it's the hunter-gatherers. These are the people who would survive and thrive. You know what I mean? Not me in my house with windows and heating and computers. It's the people who would live off the land. These are the people who would, you know, carry on.
And I you know, here the partly no one in Aotearoa is denied the right to hunt or fish wherever they want. And that was in the main part because of Māori. But because of that, it's benefited everyone. So even sometimes the accountants that, that work in the Crystal Palaces in Auckland, in the weekend, they'll be out hunting a deer to fill up their freezer, which I hope we never lose. They don't hunt for profit. They hunt to fill up for food.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got to go in a few minutes, David, because I'm picking up my daughter. I had to drive into town. We haven't got connection where I am. But I would love to talk to you again, David.
No, I've absolutely loved our conversation. We could talk
Yeah,
a long time. And
David, you're something special. There's no, no, you are.
My mum would say
There
that.
is something
That's
special.
my mum for you, but yeah.
Yeah, no, there is. Well, I know there is.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'd love for us to talk again. And as I said, I'm on this journey, and if it's okay with you, I'll be posting stuff on my social media.
Yeah,
Conversations in this path.
I'm not on social media, David, but Hinamore is. And the best way to keep in touch with me is Hinamore. Okay. Because I'm hopeless with technology. As you can recall from our first.
I'm not much better myself. And Hinamore I learned is a Maori folklore and legend, isn't it? It's a name from it's a love story, like I don't know, Romeo and Juliet or something. It's an ancient name, I think.
Yeah, and it's known, and she's a direct descendant from that Hinamore. So if parents name their child something, they only can name that child something if they come off that line. They can't just say, I like the name Hinamore.
Right, yeah.
They've got to have a connection.
Yeah.
So 12 generations back is the Hinamore she's named after who she's the descendant of.
Yeah. Well, say hello. Yeah, I'd love for us to talk again.
And Hinamore did say hello to you from her, and she said, make sure you tell David to keep communicating with me. And I said, I'll tell him because I am hopeless. And I'll lose it. I'll do something. And so thank you for your patience, David.
Thank you.
I've really loved speaking with you.
Nice.
There is something special about you. And it hasn't even begun for you. I can feel that. I can see it in your eyes, your whole everything. Just so I'll finish with an acknowledgement. E te kaihang ki runga rā, te timata me te mutunga o ngā mea katoa. To the Creator, the beginning of all things and the end of all things. Mai ia koe ko ngā ao katoa e putang. From you came all things in existence. From you came mankind. Ko tēnei māua, ko David and I, e whakamoimiti ana ki a koe ki a koutou katoa mō tēnei wahanga. We give acknowledgements and we give thanks for providing David and I with this opportunity. Me ho mai tō manaakitanga I runga ia māua mō ngā rā ka heke mai. We ask that you watch over us for the days that are coming before us. Kia koutou ngā tūpuna to the ancestry that sits above both of us. Mā ngā atua, mā ngā tūpuna e tia. To you, our ancestors, to our elders, guide us and walk with us. Mai te wā o mua, ka ako i te wā tū, mā te wā tū, ka mōhio, ka haere kihia. It is from the past we learn our lessons that will strengthen us in the now. And it is in the now we lay the pathway with these lessons to go forward into the future. Nō reira, ko tēnei te mihi kia koutou i rungi a ngā tini āhuatanga o te wā. Ko te pō, ko te ao, te tau. To all of you, the guardians of the night, we give acknowledgement. And to where David is, the guardians of each day, we give acknowledgement. Nō reira, ko tēnei te whakamoima te hei Māori ora. Te hei Māori ora at the end is kind of one of our amens. Te hei Māori ora literally means is that first breath from that human made out of clay, the woman. When she was made into a woman and life was poured into her from the gods, she got up and sneezed and took her first breath, and that was life. Mm-hmm. And that's called Te Hei Māori ora. Mm-hmm. So David, you take care.
Thank you.
You take care always.
All right. Hopefully we'll speak soon. Okay.
May they always watch over you. Always. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
And get back.
Thank you. All right. Much respect. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.